Hello, my friends, and welcome to Quartet. So nice to have you with us. We're coming to you from the Arlington Institute and in-depth conversation about the interesting subject about do we have just 2 years or so to kind of get our act together before we lose a huge opportunity to affect the emergence of a new world. I'm joined today by Penny Kelly. Hi, Penny. How are you?
Hi, I'm good. I'm great. I'm hoping everybody out there is as well.
Well, this is a time of transition for Quartet. At the moment, Greg Braden is sitting on an airplane or something somewhere, and so he'll be back with us next time. And Kingsley Dennis spent a month down in the jungles of Brazil and so on, kind of evaluating his life, which we all applaud those kinds of experiences. And he has decided that no matter how much fun he's had here with Quartet, he's going on to another part of his life now. And we all wish him very, very well. And in his role, Frank Jacob is going to come, our friend from Germany, who has been to the transition talks a couple of times and is a friend of all of us here at Quartet. So Frank will be with us the next episode, and so we're looking forward to having him with us and get everybody together again and head into the new world. So Penny, let's. There's just the two of us today, and we're going to have a deep and lengthy and interesting conversation.
Yeah.
But what have you been thinking about? What's on your mind?
Oh, oh, oh. So I have a list here, 7 different things on my mind. So the first thing that has been on my mind is the meltdown. The meltdown of the national governments is what I see happening, and that is going on in the UK. It's happening financially in China. They're in a bad way right now. Germany, France, Romania, China. Well, I said China, Canada. When Trudeau resigned, I was like, oh, there goes another one. And the US. So that's been a big thing. In the midst of all of that breakdown, I have been watching the European countries, just one after another, struggle with huge political change. I wrote a note here. It says they're all fighting, all those governments are fighting resistance to their plans. And they call it like populism or the freedom movement. But they are being reminded that the people are the bottom line. The
Yeah.
people are the ones that have to be pleased, and the leaders may run things, but if they don't run them the way people want them to go, they will be taken down, and they are being taken down, and they can't seem to flex and shift and roll with that. So with the EU leaders still trying to rein in free speech, I was just blown over by their offer to Elon Musk to he didn't have to pay his Twitter, his X fines if he would just very quietly censor people on X. And he said no. And then he used transparency. He put it right out there and said, look, this is what they're trying to make me do. And so they look like idiots. And maybe they really are idiots, but it's hard to believe that they got to where they are being idiots. So anyway, the next thing is that the German far right candidate, what's her name, Alice Weidel. I think Elon Musk hosted her on X. They just had a conversation, and now the EU is looking for. There must be a legal precedent. There must be some reason, some way for us to make that kind of conversation illegal. And I'm like, oh my God. Okay, you guys. So and then I'm looking at the two. I've really been conscious of the two financial systems. One is the global gambling ring, the big money, the currency moves, all of that. And then the other is the people and their financial system. And it looks like the big gambling ring is not doing very well. And the people are just trucking along, watching And, some of them are probably going to lose if the big gambling ring goes down. But for the most part, I think they're just going to keep right on going with their own system of trade. And the last thing is kind of a warning to people thinking of doing bad things. The final payout of $131.4 billion was paid out to the people who got taken by Bernie Madoff. And so 94% of that money has been paid back. And it was due to a group of people who said, look, we're not going to sit by and take this. And I love that. So for me, it was like, oh, wow. Okay, good for those guys. Only 6% didn't get repaid. So that's a good thing.
Well, that's very interesting. I particularly resonate with the first part about all of the broad-based kind of global disintegration, this political disintegration that's going on. And I mean, that just shoehorns directly into Martin Armstrong's notion that says during this year and next year, it's going to be all about a global civil war, and that people are going to rise up across the planet against their governments kind of writ large. And that is going to set the stage and precipitate an extraordinary kind of reorganization after into 2027.
Right.
I went down, as you know, to Martin Armstrong's conference down in Orlando here in early December, and all of his metrics all point at 2027 as just being everything goes sideways. And so you can think of that in terms of just the financial system, which of course you mentioned, but there are all the political things as well. I mean, it's headed into a very, very interesting place. Well, so I have been getting ready for our transition talks this Saturday. And we're talking about parts of what we're going to discuss today, but also a larger picture about a whole spectrum of the different kind of scenarios that have been articulated by different people about what could be on the horizon. And then a set of suggestions and direction that have come from some sources is saying, here's what you got to do about it. And so all of this is generated a sense of urgency, a unique kind of sense of urgency in me as I read all of these things and resonate with the different aspects and the things that I'm reading. And they are, they're talking to me. You keep reading this thing saying, they're talking to me. And so this is kind of our time, and when we've all come here for, and we've got a lot to do, and so it's going to be dramatically interesting, I think, in the coming months and years. And our topic is related, as I suggested, to among other things, to the talk that I'm giving this weekend, and that is, do we really have just 2 years in order to get onto the off ramp of the direction in which this is all going? And the underlying kind of notion is that there is an extraordinary kind of acceleration, if you will, and it's kind of almost secret capability of technology that is pushing ahead in terms that most people just don't understand. I ran into a couple of presentations, some videos, and I spread them around here to the Quartet team, and that talked about the advances, some of the advancements that were going on in terms of technology. And it's enough to kind of blow your mind. I mean, it's things like that they have so developed and understood the human body that they have taken the electric field around humans, and they are now using that to do human-based networks. And so you're not a cell tower, but you're functioning like a cell tower, in that that they can not only track you and understand what's going on in your mind, and they can shut off your money, and they can determine whether you get a job or not, or any number of other things. But they also have this kind of deep kind of understanding about kind of every aspect of your life. And it has moved so far, so fast, that unless you are kind of buried in or dedicated to this area of technology advancement, that you just have no idea about it. And I used to listen to Ray Kurzweil and other folks say that by 2032, that you'll be at a place where everybody's brain will be hooked up to the cloud. And yeah, it was an abstract kind of idea back then, 10 years ago, when Ray started talking in terms of that. But now you're starting to see it, and you're finding out that there are nanobots in everybody's blood that have been that have found their way there through who knows where, chemtrails, through injections, through whatever it turns out to be. They're putting these kinds of mRNA kind of vaccines into not only pigs and chickens and cows, but then through lots of plants. And so, and you have to ask yourself, what is where's this all going? What's the purpose of all of this? And it clearly is headed down this track, this technocracy track, that is a really dystopian future that where humans, as we understand them, essentially disappear. That you are controlled, you're digitized in almost every aspect of your life, and you're so controlled that there is nothing, essentially. They control all your money and everything. There's essentially nothing that you can do if they decide that your ideas or what your activities are counter to the status quo. Well, when you look downstream, it looks like that all comes together and locks up in about 2 years. And which then raises the question and says, if you got 2 years in which to get this thing off that track, look for the exit ramp, as I talk about. What do you got to do? What are we going to do? And is this really true? And so, Penny, what do you think?
Well, so a couple things. I think we need to take action. I think it needs to be very specific action. And so I have a whole bunch of stuff to share. And you're welcome to interrupt at any point, to either argue or add to. But the first thing that I would say is we have a lot of chaos happening already. And it's really challenging to set up a new world in the midst of chaos. So I don't think we should be thinking that we're doing anything other than putting in the outlines. We'll put it that way. We can't ignore the need to deal with it. When I saw those two videos, those two transhuman technocracy videos, I was like disturbed for days. It was worse than reading that book about what were that series of books by the guy who was in Black Mountain, North Carolina, A New Day, or
The Last Second, or
the last second, or 1 second too late, or it was, I had that kind of reaction. And the thing that made it worse was the fact that what I was reading and knowing was that this is all happening. The other was a story. Mm-hmm. So we can't ignore the need to do something. So there's always going to be choices. Usually they're hard ones. But we're going to have to face those sooner or later. And sooner is easier. Even though they're hard, sooner is easier. A new world. Here's the thing to keep in mind. It requires people. People who have some idea of what they want and what they don't want. And the problem is they often want exactly what they already have. So they're trying to hang on. I think we need to hang on to the people, not the stuff, not the processes, not the lifestyles, not the equipment, although I love the equipment. And some of that engineering that we have done is phenomenal, but we have to have people. Okay. So to create a new world, then people have to let go of the past, their stories, their jobs sometimes, or the job dumps them, daily routines, their food, the kind of food they're used to. And I'm going to come back to food in a minute and say something kind of shocking. Their freedoms, the freedoms that they thought they had that were just, what do you call it, bread and circus kind of freedoms. Their lifestyles, their hopes, their dreams, their old goals, their beliefs about reality, and their idea of return to the old normal. There's a new normal coming. So we have to embrace that to even start to think about a new world. And you can't do that all at once. It has to be gradual. Even if there's like an instant awakening to something, the adjustment to that has to be gradual. Otherwise, people fall apart and they become dysfunctional.
Let me insert right there that you can, as you say, it can be incremental and you can take pieces and chunks like,
right.
What are the organizing principles to start with and ideas and stuff? And so yeah.
So I have a whole bunch of organizing principles. So the first one is there has to be something appealing or attractive to move toward. You can handle the breakdown and the falling apart if you're looking at, okay, well, we'll just do this instead, or we'll go here, or we'll be this or that. So there has to be that something attractive. And even in the midst of that attractive pull, that magnetic pull, we still have to allow time for grieving and mourning. And I think we're going to see that big time over this next year in the remains of Hurricane Helene and in the LA fires. So lots of people grieving and mourning, and anger is part of that grief process. Why did you do this? God, why did you do this to me? That kind of thing. So the best way, once we just deal with those things, the best way to move ahead, stay under the radar. If you come out fighting, we don't have the missiles and the guns and the bombs and the equipment. So the only option we really have is to do something very quiet and under the radar. The next thing is somebody, and maybe this is something that's happening on YouTube right now, somebody needs to keep track of the mistakes of the elites, their hypocrisy, the fact that they ignore the laws that they instituted and put on us, their illegitimacy, their illegitimate behavior. They're using power in all the wrong ways. Their censorship. That's a sign that they're ready to collapse when they start censoring. Their own moral degeneration, their dishonesty, their thoughtless oppression, making rules that they don't care what people have to go through. They're selfish.
And they exclude themselves from all the rules, by the way.
Oh, yeah.
The Congress has a provision in almost every law that says that this does not apply to members of Congress and the staff of Congress.
That's horsepucky, as we say.
Yeah.
So there's a couple more. Greed, and we need, in tracking their mistakes, we need to use that information to make sure we don't make the same mistakes. We can't just get all the power and then do the same crap that they were doing, or we won't last either. So that's, you have to avoid making those mistakes while you're navigating toward that new world of beauty, truth, better world, etc. We have to then start building new connections. And I think some of those connections, the basic ones, are food, water, and medicine. If you can't sustain yourself, if you don't have any food and you don't have any water, and you need some medicine, then what's it about? You're not going to last. So those new connections offer us resilience in the face of having to make a lot of changes. When there's a lot of change, there's big stress. Some of it is good stress, but it's still stress. And you need some resilience in the face of that kind of stress. So in the making of connections, who's growing food? What are they doing to it? How are they producing it, etc.? We have been living on ultra-processed chemicals for such a long time now that when you get to real food, that's a huge change in the body. And you're likely to be sick just from the change. So getting through that so you are resilient and you can live on real food and recognize real food and know how to handle real food, not just go to the deli and pick up something, which is nice. It's nice now and then. But then I think we need to make sure that we can generate electricity, some for heat, for air conditioning, for tools and equipment, all that stuff that makes life tolerable and comfortable. We don't have to give that up. There's ways to generate electricity. And even if it's kind of a sloppy, noisy, messy, unreliable, some is better than none, hands down. So, and you can look at people in other parts of the world that don't have electricity and what they're constrained by. They're constrained by the darkness. So then we should outline a basic document of values, ethics, and principles. We can copy the Constitution if we want, but we have to add some of our own values, ethics, and principles based on a refinement of all those mistakes that the elites were making, the greed, all that kind of stuff. And then we have to start educating young and old alike, cradle to grave almost, regarding those same values, ethics, and principles. And that gives a chance to move to some higher dimensional consciousness, which then builds a higher, better functioning world. So the goal is to develop the whole person. And that there's all kinds of teachers that will be, I think, out of work. They can still teach, and they just need a different framework to use. So the next thing is, I think we have to begin meeting quietly, but in open forums like the whole town. That isn't an exclusive thing, and solve problems, address challenges, develop strategies, pretend, what if this happens? What do we do? Who do we contact? What do we know? What do we have on hand? So those kinds of meetings, maybe only once a month, but still they cement and really fortify an area, a town, a neighborhood. So those meeting in open forums are critical.
Well, we're doing that here in Berkeley Springs, as you know. We've got a variety of kind of initiatives, including getting together. We just had one last night. We call it a supper club, which is a kind of potluck thing where we got maybe not last night, but usually we have about 16 or 17 people to get together, and we talk about the future of our community and how, and I'm trying to drive the conversation toward this an organization and a response kind of mechanism and plan.
I see that by Valentine's Day, so that's a month away, people are finally ready for that for more getting together. And the the California fires have sparked that readiness. People we're at a critical mass of people who understand that, hey, this stuff is not happening accidentally. We're under attack. So then I think once the local area starts meeting and addressing issues, then there has to be this reaching out to who else is doing this kind of thing over there in West Virginia or Tucson, Arizona, or Denver, Colorado, or wherever. So that reaching out, connecting with other groups, that I think is not only about, well, it's about two things that I see are really at the top of the list. One is, what are you doing regarding finances, financial stability? What are you doing as far as communication is concerned?
Yeah.
So those two things, those are big things. Means of trade, finances.
Let me just mention again that these are things that are on our list, the top of our list here in our community. We're, of course, distributing radios and communications capabilities to 200 families, and building the networks so that they can all talk to each other. We've have people coming in here to talk about alternative currencies that we can build in the area. And so, I agree with you completely.
Yeah. Okay. That's great. And I think that's what I see happening over this next year is people definitely looking at building the alternative financial networks quietly, if possible. And then I think people need to meet and talk with people in their area about housing and transportation. There is no reason for people to be homeless. None. We have the capacity. Well, the reason is because a handful of guys have all the money and they're not sharing it, but that doesn't have to be. So, and I was amazed at the Amish people who came into the Asheville area and in 48 hours built, what was it, a dozen houses or some number of small houses for people. So they're still in tents and campers. I'm like, oh, and it's cold. And it's cold on purpose in that exact area. So then I think we need to identify specific people who have communication equipment and communication skills and connect them to others across the region. We need to be able to communicate and know what's happening elsewhere. And I think that's what the drones are about. They're to prevent any kind of surveillance on the part of the population, the general population, and prevent them from finding where are the pockets of people doing bad things to try to destroy the country and the people's will and their resilience. So we need to identify people and find out who knows how to read the clouds, the wind, the weather. That's something that I learned as part of being a farmer when I was a kid. Everybody knew how to read the weather. Nobody needed to tune into the weatherman. Okay.
You need a good sailor too. I mean, they know how to do that as well.
Exactly. So, now I'll say things here and there to my kids, well, it's going to get colder. It's going to get warmer. And they're like, how do you know? And I'm like, because the wind just changed. Things like that. They're not even paying attention to the basics. And then identify people with advanced repair skills. And that's not just repair, that's invention. Who loves to invent? Because, man, invention is going to be really important as we move into that new world. And we are reinventing everything in such a way that the people who said, well, we shouldn't be doing it this way, but had to go along with it, are now free to say, we shouldn't be doing it that way. I think we can make it work this way. So everything we have, it takes us down. So people with advanced repair skills and inventiveness. And then I think we have to make a decision that everyone is worth food, shelter, care, warmth, et cetera. And that includes the animals. Our animals are part of our family, whether those are cows or ducks or goats or cats or dogs or birds, whatever. Though we are a part of the whole system. So then I think a couple of basic things. Truth is basic. If we're not going to tell the truth to one another and be kind in doing so, we're not going to get very far. So truth is basic. Health is critical. I mentioned that already. Courage is necessary. You got to have some guts. And sometimes the courage is just the courage to say, today I'm going to eat something different. That's how you start. The right use of everything. That's an old Buddhist kind of concept, right work, right use, etc. But I think that we need to keep that in mind. Waste is unnecessary and unacceptable. How can we do things where we're not creating waste? There's ways, I know, because we don't have waste where I come from. War is not a solution at all. Communication, talk, trust, building bridges, those are solutions. Honor is your word. So we have tons and tons of wasted time reading contracts, fine print, issuing court cases, blah, 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 because somebody we think did us wrong or we want to take them down. That's not acceptable. So honor is your word. And then justice, trust, harmony, humility, integrity, and transparency are the foundation stones of that new world. Those foundation stones have to be there. And then decision making must be horizontal or at least a moving wave. We can't say, oh, it's got to be absolutely horizontal, because sometimes it's not. But it can't be a pyramid. It can't be a hierarchy. And life is simple when values, ethics, and principles are adhered to. So let's kiss. Keep it simple, sweetheart. So that's what I think is really where we have to start moving. And most people are looking for somebody to just start. They don't want to be out front. I don't either, but somehow I got there, and I'm like, okay, every time I try to go back and hide under the covers, it doesn't work. Yeah. So it's like, okay, well, this is what I would do.
Thank you for that great list. I would add one thing to that, and that is the lack of secrecy. I think that the big problem, of course, that tamps down innovation and creativity and other things, and it really and it isolates and concentrates knowledge in very narrow, small areas, and that what you need to do here is that you need to enable the flourishing, the flowering of everybody. You need to value innovation. That is to say, make it a value or some kind of metric or some way that becomes an integral part of this new world, because you're going to need new ideas going forward for sure. I mean, that's going to be the only way you get from here to there is with a whole bunch of new ideas, and you need to realize the extraordinary kind of value and importance of all of that.
And now, I would add, go ahead.
No, please go ahead.
I would add that kind of collaboration and cooperation and inventiveness has to come out of the education that we create. If you have an education system that puts people, children, in a classroom and makes them sit silently in a desk all day, what you're going to end up with is a bunch of dummies. Because people learn by copying. That's the best way, fastest way to learn. They learn from one another, and they learn through their body. And when you are cut off from Mother Nature, which is where all the secrets are, then you don't even see those things. I cannot even begin to list. If I were even going to try, it would take pages of things that I observed, silly little things, stupid little things that, kids notice when they're playing in the mud, when they're fiddling with water, swimming, when they're walking through the woods, when they're building sandcastles, when they're, whatever they're doing. Kids are noticing a million things that have great significance. And, and then you grow up into an adult and say, how does that work? Well, we don't have anybody asking that. And that's because the education system has said, we'll tell you what to think. We'll tell you what you should know. And there we are. We need to change that education system so that the people coming out of that are full of a million questions. So,
part of what I'm learning here in the last couple of weeks, kind of in preparation for this talk, is that there are some other ideas about kind of the mechanisms and the processes to get here. First of all, they make the case, just like you do, that the solution to this situation, to this kind of dilemma, if you will, is to not go into the teeth of the present system and not be a threat. But what we ought to do is to begin to build an alternative world, an alternative.
Like a parallel system?
Well, it's a parallel system that's kind of diverging, if you will, in a sense. Not so crazy, but that in fact, that if you arrive, that this new system, of course, is built upon an increased level of consciousness. And that when you do that and you bring people together around that increased level of consciousness, what you do is essentially build a defensive mechanism that is not of interest to those who are interested in all of the negative energy that they exist upon. And so that what we need to do here is start to get clusters of people around the world who all, in kind of an organized way, start to think about the organizing principles, for instance, of a new world. What are the basic ideas and you can help them and gather up things and share information across all of these. But what you need is folks and this is part of this kind of entrainment process of getting a whole lot of folks thinking about the same thing and getting their mind entrained, which then turns into manifestation ultimately. And so what you need to do is start to initiate this kind of planet-wide effort to encourage like-minded people to start getting together and actively thinking about, and here at the Arlington is that we're going to help them and give them frameworks and I don't know, things to think and ways to think about this. So you do that come from a social construct, but from a personal kind of perspective, what things that I'm seeing are suggesting is that you need to move from being a victim and seeing yourself, your whole perspective, your whole mindset as being a victim, that you are dependent upon all the outside and all of these people and they're all after you and your life is crummy for for whatever reason, because of all that. You have to this is a dramatic kind of mind shift that needs to happen, that you move over into where you're self-empowered, and to where you realize that the time is right. This is going in the right direction. There's extraordinary opportunity. We've come here to do this, and that there are mechanisms, there are processes. As a matter of fact, there are kind of manifestation steps that can be kind of implemented, not only in terms of your own personal life, but then translated over into these social groups. That is rather than this being some kind of random thing about what do you think or how do we do, that you go through a process of articulating what the thing is and generating kind of energy and intent around it and so on. And but there are ways in which to do this. And as I've mentioned a number of times before, Greg Braden and I have talked about that they really need to get a media company of some sort that is focused and oriented toward these things. So you start to build feature films and television programs and other such things that use this new model, this new vision as the basis for showing how life could be in any of a number of situations, and how you resolve problems and other kind of things, so that it becomes real. And then you again get entrainment, so you get a lot of folks. And so that's the kind of things that I've been thinking about in the last couple of days.
I like that idea of the media company putting out something with a different level of a message.
Mm-hmm.
That I think that's really important. We've been so not served by the media that's out there. It's really sad. So and how are we going to know what's happening with our people elsewhere and who needs what if we don't get the truth and we aren't told what's really happening? So, yeah.
Yeah, there is that too. This whole business of transparency and some way of an alternative media, I guess. But there's something, the next step, the next iteration of than what it is right now, that is trustworthy, that for some reason, some credible reason, that this is the truth as they understand it right now. And then there are a number of sources and platforms who all purport to play in that role. And so the idea is kind of coming forth. What also is going to need to happen from a technology point of view is a new internet that can't be shut off by local governments and so on. This is providing the kind of information fabric for the whole planet.
I really I like that term, the fabric of information for the whole planet. That's really an important thing. If you wrap yourself in a fabric of lies, where are you going to end up? You're going to end up lost somewhere, and the people who lied aren't going to care. And I just want to comment, when you were talking about anyway, the awareness was that we really need to come back to self and our own inner authority and trusting ourselves. And that authority thing, I think, is what I see. Well, actually, that's one of the things I see coming. So when we get to that part of the end of the program, that's really a big thing, is the return to trusting what you see and hear with your own eyes, and what you think and what you feel. And that's not going to be in alignment with what used to be.
There's an angle on that one that is kind of a variation of this airline thing, that put your mask on first before you help someone else.
Yeah.
It says that you got to get your own situation, you get your own life together. You've got to essentially and move yourself away from this victimhood, this notion of victimhood, which is religions and everybody are all trying to tell you that. I mean, that's the basic concept underneath all of these kinds of things, and that in so doing, that is not selfish. That is taking care of, that is your health, if you will, your writ large, so that you are able then to help other people. As a matter of fact, you could easily make the case, that I certainly would, is that that your first obligation is to yourself, is to get yourself to the place, and you don't have to worry about anybody else, because if you get your own act together, then you'll help everybody and you'll do other kind of things. But if all your orientation is outside to others, and what their problems are and what their other kind of stuff are, then you lose the ability and the time and the resources to be able to really raise yourself and do well by yourself in this situation.
And I want to just kind of throw in there, over the last few months, I've heard this comment, and the term is service to self. And I don't know what the context for that is, but
the Law of One from the Ra books.
Okay. So what are they saying there? Service to self is where it starts?
No, they're saying that they juxtapose that with service to others. And what they're trying to say is your life kind of basically oriented toward serving yourself or serving others. Well, that's a corruption of this idea. And it's not service to self that you're trying to do, but it's building yourself and realizing the priorities, and then understanding that, I mean, I can tell you all kinds of stories, practical stories of people in my lifetime who have decided, for religious reasons, particularly humanitarian reasons, that their job was to help everybody else. And they have, in the process, destroyed themselves, destroyed their marriages, had to move out of town to find some place where they could just start over again, because they were so, this is empathy as far as I'm concerned. And I have a whole kind of issue about deep empathy, because that just destroys your ability to effectively be what, rise to the occasion and be what you can, because you're trying to relate to everybody else. Now we're ourselves. We came here as a unique piece of consciousness, and if you don't take care of yourself, then you can't help anybody else. And
that's right.
The Lord knows that you and I and Greg and there's some of us who play in this space certainly have been helpful to a lot of folks, but the way you do that is from a solid kind of position that says, if I don't have my act together, then I can't do any of the rest of the stuff.
Right. And I'm going to use an analogy. And I heard this twice in the last maybe month. And the analogy is, these were very, very, very wealthy people talking. And they said, when you get past a certain amount of money, more money doesn't matter. More money doesn't make you happy. More money doesn't make you healthy. And the same thing happens when you get a certain amount of your own inner authority, when you take care of yourself first, when you're healthy, when you're balanced, when you're stable, when you realize, oh my gosh, I have what I need. Who can I help? That comes up naturally. Who can I help? And I remember telling my daughter when she was on welfare, one day you're going to have enough to be able to help others. And she said, I can't imagine that. I just can't even imagine. 25 years later, she said, Mom, you were right. I have more than enough. What can I do? Who can I help? Where do I start? And so that, that's a very, very stark reminder of the fact that once you are filled up, it starts to overflow, and then you want to give it away.
Well, this has been an interesting conversation, and it's really fun just with the two of us and with you. And
we make a good quartet.
Yeah, we do, or a duet, or whatever you want to call it.
Oh my, yeah,
And
true.
so to all of you who have joined us, our listeners and viewers, thank you for being with us. This comes to you from the Arlington Institute, which is a little think tank that I started about 35 years ago. And we hold forth here in the little resort town of Berkeley Springs, which is West Virginia, which is just 100 miles from Washington and Baltimore. And we're in the business of trying to facilitate this transition to this new world and do that through these kinds of programs. You can learn about many of the things that we do at arlingtoninstitute.org. And there's more about all of us at Transition Talks at transitiontalks.org. There's information about Quartet and What's Up, which is what we do with Greg Braden. Transition Talks, by the way, is a monthly program that we have where we have speakers like Penny Kelly and Greg Braden and Frank Jacob and others who come here to our little resort town, and we live stream them. So all of this is available no matter where you live and for 6 months afterwards. So you don't have to sit there in the middle of the night if you're from Europe or whatever. And all of it's oriented toward this whole process of becoming a new human and, navigating our way into this new world. And so we appreciate all of your support and your help and your interest. And we look forward to coming back and being with you in another 2 weeks when we'll have a full complement and we will have a quartet. So thank you very much, Penny Kelly, and thank you all for being with us. And we'll see you in a couple of weeks. Take care.
Yeah, be well.